They called her name over the loudspeaker, the sound echoing across the drill field loud enough that every trainee turned in unison. Standing before the dense ranks at Hopefield Flight Training Camp, Ava Carter, the only black woman in formation, was handed a sealed envelope and curtly ordered to step out of line. No explanation, no mercy, just the cold precision of an exclusionary system. Someone snickered. Another muttered with thinly veiled contempt, "Told you! Harlem girls don't belong in the skies." Have you ever been publicly humiliated simply because of your background, your skin color, or a dream you dared to hold? That autumn morning, the air at Hopefield felt heavier than usual, as if invisible boundaries between people had been tightened. On the wide parade ground, under the fluttering flag, hundreds of cadets stood at rigid attention for the week's first roll call. Suddenly, the silence shattered with the commanding captain's clipped voice. "Ava Carter, step forward." A stunned hush. All eyes locked on Ava, the lone black woman amid a sea of crisp pilot uniforms, most worn by officers' children. Blonde hair, blue eyes, raised in families with generations of aviation heritage. Ava drew in a measured breath, clenched her fists, squared her shoulders, and stepped forward, each footfall weighted by the invisible scrutiny of hundreds. At the head of the line, First Lieutenant Hunter Vaughn, hair immaculately slicked back, features as cold as stone, held up a thick, meticulously sealed white envelope. His lips curved into a hard smile, a glint of grim satisfaction in his eyes, as though he'd personally excised a foreign element from the collective. No reasons were given, no formal notice. Vaughn extended the envelope toward Ava. His tone was flat and merciless. "Accept these orders and leave the formation. Effective immediately." The silence gave way to whispers and cruel laughter from the ranks behind. "She won't last past one training cycle." Another ghetto girl dreaming of first-class wings. What a joke. She'll be cut loose soon enough. That's the unspoken rule here. Ava said nothing. Her gaze stayed fixed ahead, as if all her pride and endurance gathered behind her gently trembling lashes. Each barb was a blade slicing through her resolve. Yet she maintained a calm facade, not a single tear betraying her. Quietly, she turned and walked away, leaving behind the jeers and scornful looks of veteran cadets, accustomed to privilege from birth. Amid the sea of cold stares, only Flight Engineer Sergeant Marcus Brooks, a black man whose hands bore the familiar stains of the workshop, watched Ava go. In his eyes lay a universe of sorrow and empathy. He understood better than anyone that Ava carried not just personal humiliation, but the burden of generations denied the dream of flight because of their skin, their roots, and others' prejudices. When Ava's figure finally vanished from view, only the soft whisper of wind remained over the concrete expanse, scouring away footprints and deepening the divide between hope and the harsh reality of Hopefield Training Camp. Stepping off the parade ground, Ava saw her shadow stretch out along the cobblestone path leading back to the barracks, each step feeling heavier among the row of cold, gray brick buildings. When the door to her room clicked shut behind her, the world seemed to shrink down to the sound of her own ragged breathing and the dim light filtering through the window. She sat silently on the narrow, iron-framed bed, hands trembling as she reached into her blouse pocket and pulled out the one thing that had kept her grounded through all the storms of her life. A scratched silver badge engraved with the barely legible name, Samuel Carter. She pressed the badge into her palm and traced a faded gouge with her fingertips as memories flooded back like an old, faded reel. Samuel Carter, her father, a towering black man whose gentle yet resolute gaze had once been the pride of his small southern Georgia hometown, where black folks dared only to dream small dreams. The villagers revered him as the silent legend. His hands had saved countless young black pilots' lives, repairing planes in impossible conditions with little more than a few worn tools, and an unbreakable faith. To Ava, her father had been more than the man who taught her to identify an engine's whine with her bare ears or to sense wind direction by the smell of grass. He was the one who ignited her own dream of touching the sky. Whenever she'd come home from school, upset by taunts, Samuel would lift her onto his knee, give her shoulder a gentle squeeze, and say, "Hold your head high, my girl. True wings are in your heart." But prejudice never sleeps. Samuel's own military aviation career was cruelly cut short by a training accident. His plane's controls failed during a critical test flight. Though he survived, his skill, courage, and calm saving him, the official report coldly blamed pilot error. No real investigation, no one to clear his name. Every shred of evidence vanished too fast. The officer who signed off on the final technical review was none other than Hunter Vaughn, then a fresh academy graduate, fair-skinned and silver-tongued, always ready to exploit the system's blind spots to climb higher. Back in the village, Samuel retreated into quiet life, helping the next generation while avoiding questions about the past. Yet every night, Ava could hear him tossing and turning, haunted by the dishonor forced upon him, a wound no matter how strong a black man might be, especially in that conservative southern town. Ava had grown up caught between two worlds. On one side, the silent pride of her Carter bloodline. On the other, the shadow of suspicion and scorn passed down through generations. She'd felt the divide from the moment she arrived at Hopefield, the whispers behind her back, the scrutinizing stares, the malfunctions in every test when her name came up, and the constant sense of standing on the outside, no matter how hard she tried. Lieutenant Hunter Vaughn, the very man now in power, personified that invisible wall. Always polite, always speaking of fairness, but with eyes so cold they cut deep, every word laced with the unspoken message that someone like you would never belong here. He manipulated the system's intricacies to keep Ava from any real opportunity, sometimes with a mere shrug or a vague note in her evaluation file. In Vaughn's world, a black woman from a poor background didn't deserve a seat among the officer lineage. That night, in her cramped room, Ava felt her father's pain and her own more sharply than ever. But in that stillness, she also heard her own heartbeat, and the childhood vow thundered back, as vivid as the first time she laid her hand on the controls of that old crop duster. No matter the cost, I will fly, and I will fly not just for myself, but for every soul ever denied their dream because of their skin. In the oppressive darkness of the barracks, with every old memory still settling like dust, Ava felt she couldn't even breathe. The air here was heavy with ghosts of prejudice, while beyond the walls the vast Hopefield sky shimmered with distant runway lights. Unable to bear the cold walls and her roommate's pitying stares, Ava threw on her jacket and slipped out, heading for the one place she truly felt alive, the aircraft maintenance hangar. Late at night, the workshop glowed only with pale light seeping through the partially closed door, mingling with the dry tick of the wall clock and the familiar scent of engine oil. Amid rusted engines, scattered screws, and battered airframes, Marcus Brooks knelt under an old helicopter, hands smeared with black grease, the old scar across his wrist still visible. When he saw Ava, he simply nodded, no questions, and slid her a plastic stool, returning to the soft clink of his tools. Ava sat, feeling every layer of her defenses melt onto the cold floor. Her eyes welled, but she forced a calm expression, staring at Marcus as he tightened a bolt, as if focusing on that rhythm might make the pain fade. But Marcus wasn't one to ignore another's hurt. He set down his wrench with a heavy sigh and spoke in a low, gravelly voice. "Do you know why you're here, Ava? Because they've never wanted someone like you, or me, or your father on this airfield. You think you're the only victim?" Ava pressed her lips together, fingers clutching the silver badge, throat tight. Marcus pulled his stool closer, his eyes full of understanding. "I've seen a lot here at Hopefield. Black cadets, Latinx cadets, even Asian cadets. Every time they reach the final check, there's suddenly a technical glitch. Their scores plummet. Once, a Haitian girl as talented as you dared to correct her own test, and they charged her with insubordination, booted her out for good. Meanwhile, those blonde kids whose dads are commanders, they stumble but get their errors corrected. Extra credit, a note saying, 'needs more support,' and they're fine." His voice grew quieter, eyes burning with simmering anger. "Don't think I don't know who Hunter Vaughn is. He was the one who signed off on your father's final flight check, then quietly wiped all the evidence into an undetermined technical malfunction. After that, he climbed every rank, surrounding himself with protégés, family, and a cadre of traditionalists, white folks mostly, who know how to bow their heads and keep quiet." At that, Ava felt her chest tighten, every doubt she'd held suddenly undeniable. For the first time, she didn't feel alone or helpless, because before her stood a man who had suffered, who had risen, and who now offered her a hand. Marcus gently placed a small hair clip on the bench, the only memento left of that Haitian girl, then looked up at Ava, voice firm. "They'll do anything to push us out, just like they did to your father, like they've done to so many others. But if you want to stay, if you truly want to touch this sky, you have to fight. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who's had their dream stolen." Ava trembled, her shoulders shaking slightly, but a rare light flickered in her eyes. That fresh, raw despair was warmed by Marcus Brooks's grease-stained handshake. She knew, from that night on, this fight was no longer hers alone. Marcus's grease-stained hand tightened on Ava's shoulder, the only warmth left in that long, cold night. His words echoed in her mind. "They'll do everything to push us out. If you want to stay, you have to fight, not just for yourself, but for everyone whose dreams were stolen." Under the hangar's dim glow, a strange fire kindled in Ava's chest, a blend of righteous anger and the unwavering pride of Carter blood. After a long silence, Marcus leaned forward, locking eyes with her. His voice challenged and pleaded all at once. "If you had one chance, just one, to prove to this entire base that they're wrong about you, would you dare?" Ava fell silent, drawing in a deep breath. In that moment, her deprived childhood, her father's sighs over grounded flights, the times her scores were adjusted, and every scornful glance, all of it hit rock bottom. Yet, from that abyss of despair, her resolve rose stronger than ever. Slowly, she lifted her chin. Her steely gaze flared into a fierce blaze that no amount of years or cruelty could ever shatter. "I dare, I will, no matter the cost." Marcus offered a small relieved smile, as if shedding years of burden. He pulled a maintenance schedule from his pocket and whispered, "In 3 days, there's a major demonstration for Pentagon brass. The entire review board, commanding officers, even the military press will be here. And the star performer? None other than Captain Hunter Vaughn, the very man who epitomizes everything this place hides." His words landed like salt in Ava's fresh wounds. Vaughn's a master manipulator. He controls everything: grades, flight schedules, simulators, even the comments in our files. Officer lineage kids with snow-white skin slip up once and get a private reprimand, a second chance. But people like you, one misstep and you're gone, all under the guise of military standards. Ava clenched her silver badge, fury burning in her chest. Marcus leaned in close, voice dropping to a confidential whisper. But I've saved a secret weapon. An F-22 just arrived for upgrades, unregistered in the flight system, untouched by anyone outside our maintenance crew. I've overhauled it, checked every bolt, every line of code. Right now, I'm the only one with access. If you're willing, it can be yours for one secret training night. Ava froze. In the darkness, Marcus's eyes gleamed with the grit of someone who'd endured injustice and triumphed. I've also rigged an independent flight sim, off the official grid, leaving no trace on your record. You'll train under real parameters. No one to mess with your scores. No system glitches. Just your skill, your courage, your will. Marcus's daring sprang not only from compassion, but from a fierce hope to see someone finally shatter the color lines that have divided Hopefield for so long. Ava looked up at him, and she was no longer the girl kicked out of formation that morning, but a true pilot, ready for the fight of her life. Outside the hangar, the Hopefield night deepened, cold winds whispering through the cracks like a storm on the horizon, but this time, Ava would be the one to unleash the tempest against the sky of prejudice. Outside the maintenance hangar, the Hopefield night felt thick and unnaturally silent. Only distant insects chirped, and security lights cast long, yellow streaks across the icy concrete. Ava bowed her head, pulling her cap's brim low and letting her work jacket cover the neat flight uniform beneath. Everything to avoid the patrolling guard's gaze or any lingering cadets on the apron. That night, her heart pounded, and each step felt heavier, as if she were treading the razor's edge between dream and reality, between soaring and failing. Marcus Brooks, broad-shouldered, his face weathered by years of worry, stood watch at the back door of the simulator bay. He double-checked every camera, every mechanical lock, every motion sensor. His grease-stained hands moved with decisive efficiency, honed by decades of fixing planes while living under constant threat. When he was satisfied, Marcus gave a sharp nod, rare trust shining in his eyes after all the betrayals he'd endured. Ava inhaled deeply, fingers curling once more around her father's silver badge in her breast pocket. Then she pushed open the heavy metal door and stepped into the world of machines and interrupted dreams. Inside the simulator bay, a cold green glow reflected off the F-22's sleek control panel. A cutting-edge fighter jet she'd only ever seen in photos or military videos. Hundreds of buttons, multi-layered screens, digital displays, warning lights blinking like distant stars, all so foreign yet magnetic. In that moment, Ava felt like the little girl who once crept into her father's cockpit, trembling but unafraid. Marcus leaned in and whispered, "It's just you and this sky. Don't think about them out there. Don't think about Vaughn or anyone else. Focus on the feeling, on yourself, on your own dream. Tonight, nobody can stop you from flying." Ava placed both hands on the control stick, feeling the simulator's subtle vibrations. She entered the start command, and instantly all the screens lit up, the whir of the simulated engine sounding like her own heartbeat. Every sense came alive. Memories of childhood flooded back. Summer in Georgia, endless cornfields under a blazing sun, her father's crop duster rumbling down the cracked dirt runway. Samuel Carter patiently teaching his daughter to listen to the engine, to feel the breath of each gust of wind, to hold the controls steady even when her hands shook. "If you want to fly with the sky," he'd say, you have to let it guide you. Don't force it your way, let it lead you. Now, amid Hopefield's chill, Ava closed her eyes, letting sound and scent and every lesson her father taught direct her through the first test. The ready light came on, and technical readouts scrolled across the central display, fully simulating real flight conditions, from complex weather to collision warnings, engine malfunctions, and emergency procedures every F-22 pilot must master. The first run was dizzying. Ava wrestled with the flood of commands, warning lights blinking, alarms blaring. Her fingers hesitated over the key combinations, her foot on the pedal lagging behind the screen's response. The simulated jet wobbled, engine failure warnings flashed, and then, in bold red letters, crash. Ava's heart sank, but she didn't let go of the stick. She tapped her headset and asked Marcus to reset the scenario. Marcus didn't say a word, just watched, patient, never rushing or offering advice. He knew real transformation is never easy, especially when someone carries a history of rejection on their shoulders. On her second, third attempts, Ava tackled a combat simulation. Enemy missiles incoming, altitude to maintain, radar to juggle. She failed again. Mission failed. But something surprising happened. The unorthodox habit she'd learned flying crop dusters gave her an edge in this complex virtual sky. Instead of panicking at system errors, she listened to the simulated engine's tremors, felt resistance through the stick, adjusted her wing angle, throttled back just in time. Skills that had become second nature. On the fourth, fifth, then sixth runs, Ava began racking up the top scores usually reserved for elite trainees. The display lit up with A+, after every sortie. The simulator's AI congratulated her with crisp messages. Excellent, response time, top 5%. Marcus finally laughed out loud, unclenching a hand to slap her shoulder, all the pride of a father in his eyes. Yet at that moment, the harsh truth of the outside injustice felt sharper than ever. If Ava could achieve those scores here, why was she constantly held back out there? Why did her real exams always mysteriously fail her, or get downgraded for errors she didn't make? Marcus looked at her, his voice rough but proud. You were born to fly, Ava. You carry the blood of those booted off this sky, but you'll conquer it. Not with privilege or empty promises, but with your own hands and grit. Tomorrow, if anyone asks, tell them that this sky, though closed to people like us, is always ready to welcome those brave enough to claim it. Ava bowed her head, tears welling, not from exhaustion, but because for the first time in years she felt truly free. Free from fear, free from betrayal, and above all, free from the darkness of her father's past. Outside the hangar, the first light of dawn threaded through the narrow windows, her signal that a new day had begun, and an unyielding counterattack had started. When Ava powered down the simulator and gently rested her hand on the console, she whispered, to herself, to her father in the beyond, and to everyone who'd ever been overlooked. I will fly, on my own wings, no matter how narrow this sky may be. As the night began to fade and the first light of morning crept through the cracks of the hangar doors, Ava still felt the afterglow of last night's simulator triumph. She left the hangar brimming with hope, her hand clutching her father's silver badge. A personal promise. Truth and talent will speak for themselves. Yet, before she could fully savor that feeling, Hopefield's harsh reality came crashing back down to earth. That morning, when Ava stepped into the testing bay, the atmosphere was uncharacteristically frigid. The instructors peered at her over thick lenses, their gazes cold and indifferent. A life flight skills evaluation had been arranged on the tarmac, attended by several high-ranking officers, none more conspicuous than Lieutenant Hunter Vaughn, dressed in pristine uniform, his stern expression embodying standards and discipline themselves. Ava ran through her checklist. Flight suit properly fitted, control panel free of alerts. But when it was her turn, an unfamiliar error flashed at startup. Hydraulic system warning. A red warning light blinked incessantly on the console. A white-coated technician strolled over unhurried, bent down to inspect it, then shook his head. "It seems unstable, but just proceed. We'll send this on to maintenance later." Ava caught the technician's glance flicking toward Vaughn. He merely offered a cool smile and tipped his chin. "Carry on." A chill ran through her. It felt staged, as though an unseen hand was pulling the strings. No matter how expertly she tried to troubleshoot, using every skill she'd tirelessly honed, the computer flagged her performance as unsatisfactory, and the aggregate score on the main display turned red. When she stepped out of the test booth, her teammates quietly averted their eyes. A few whispered behind cupped hands. On the electronic scoreboard, Ava Carter was stamped in red with the note, "Unsatisfactory performance. Adaptive skills under review." She clenched her fist, feeling her face burn. Not from genuine failure, but from the humiliation of being manipulated in broad daylight. Marcus was waiting for her in the maintenance bay, wrench in hand as always, but today his face was taut with anger. "Another technical glitch, huh?" he growled. "That F-22 hydraulic system was inspected and signed off last night. There's no way it'd randomly fail like that. They're playing their old game on you, Ava." She sat down wordlessly, head bowed. Marcus lowered his voice, eyes sharp as blades. "Vaughn did this to your father, too. Back then, his equipment coincidentally malfunctioned at inspection time, and all his records got quietly changed. Your dad's signature disappeared without a trace. The repair logs were rewritten under some shared account. No one was held accountable. All because he was black, nobody in the system to back him up." Ava bit her lip. Memories of her father's downfall pierced her heart like knives. She recalled evenings when Samuel Carter sat lost in thought at his desk, eyes dim with the weight of a dream stolen by unseen forces. Marcus's words confirmed the bitter truth. At Hopefield, the system didn't just manipulate scores. It controlled people's futures and reputations. Over the following weeks, Ava saw the system's dark side more clearly than ever. At every evaluation, she encountered mysterious malfunctions, from simulator software crashes to false readings on the control panel, even vague technical notes appearing on her personal file. Once, right after she set a reaction time record in simulation, the equipment reset itself, and the result was simply logged as not recorded due to system error. When she asked administration to investigate, she received only shrugs, forced smiles, and the directive, "Follow procedure, await verification." In every briefing, Vaughn took the lead, his tone clipped and professional, hammering home a single message. "We must protect the Academy's image. Only those who meet our standards, who embody our tradition, deserve these opportunities." Beneath the flowery language lay a frosty glare directed squarely at Ava and anyone else different. Each time he concluded, his loyal cohort nodded in unison, while the technician silently avoided any challenge. Only people like Marcus, those who'd been driven to the brink, who'd witnessed fellow people of color expelled by the same tricks, dared to publicly sigh and shake their heads. He had become the only barrier between Ava and despair. One late evening, as the two of them sat huddled in a shadowed corner of the bay, Marcus placed a sheaf of weathered papers before her, score sheets and technical reports for dozens of Black and Latinx cadets who'd been expelled from Hopefield over the past decade. Every report bore the same signature mark: identical technical errors, insufficient adaptive skills, comments, missing or altered signatures replaced in different ink. Marcus drew on his cigarette, voice thick with sorrow. "See this? This system can't err, because it's built so no one can trace its tracks. But there's one thing it can't hide forever: the truth. Only it won't ever speak unless people like you rip it into the light." Ava remained silent for a long time, her knuckles white as she gripped her knee, gaze fixed on the row of jets lined up under the yellow bay lights. Injustice at Hopefield had cost her father his wings. Now it threatened to consume her too. But Ava knew she couldn't back down. She had to win, not with tears, not with pity, but with her opponent's own weapons, indisputable evidence and unrivaled excellence, so that even if the system flipped its mask, no one could twist the truth. In the hush of the maintenance bay, she whispered to Marcus, as much a vow to herself, "It's time to give back what they've stolen. Not just for Dad, not just for me, but for everyone who had their dreams ripped away. I won't let this system clip another pair of wings." Outside, a distant jet engine's roar echoed, reminding her that the sky remained open to those brave enough to claim it, even with empty hands and an unbreakable will. At the very moment Ava resolved not to back down, fate tested her will again. No matter how carefully she and Marcus had covered their tracks during those secret training nights, Hopefield's strict security systems caught every slip. The surveillance cameras, meant to protect the hangar, had unwittingly recorded her and Marcus entering and exiting the simulator after hours. And it wasn't just anyone who spotted the anomaly in the logs the next morning, but First Lieutenant Angela Alvarez, head of base security. Lieutenant Alvarez was a rare sight at Hopefield, a black woman officer in a sea of men. Behind her steely discipline lay scars of isolation, suspicion, and near expulsion from the service simply for speaking truth to power. No one understood the sting of being scrubbed from the roster for not fitting in better than Angela Alvarez. Perhaps that's why the moment her gaze landed on Ava Carter's name in the security printout, her expression turned contemplative. That morning, right after another frustrating flight check failure, a security guard approached Ava with a curt message. "Lieutenant Alvarez wants you in her office, now." Ava's heart galloped. She steeled herself for an investigation, maybe even expulsion, but her eyes still burned with resolute fire. Lieutenant Alvarez's office sat at the end of the main building's corridor. The heavy wooden door was closed, the blinds half drawn. When Ava knocked, a firm voice called, "Come in." Inside, Alvarez stood behind her desk, her nameplate gleaming on her lapel. She didn't mince words. Sliding the security log across the desk, she pointed to the timestamps. "Care to explain this, Carter? Don't bother lying. I've reviewed the cameras. I know who's helping you, and I want to hear it from you." The room fell silent. Ava stared at the records, her hand trembling. The data was indisputable. After-hours simulator access, Marcus Brooks's user code, the exact times of her secret training. Alvarez folded her arms, her gaze unwavering, voice cutting colder. "You have 7 minutes. Make them count." Time stretched. Ava sank into the chair across from Alvarez, clutching her father's silver badge as tears spilled down her cheeks. Her first show of vulnerability since arriving at Hopefield. Her voice quivered, but every word rang with years of suppressed truth. "Lieutenant, I know I broke the rules, but I had no choice. Every check, my equipment malfunctioned. My scores were doctored beyond explanation. They said I wasn't capable, but I practiced. I proved I could do it, and no one believed me. If not for Marcus Brooks's help, I'd never have known how far I could fly. They did this to my father, Samuel Carter. He lost his career to a vague pilot error report. Ava laid it all bare, the rigged failures, Vaughn's manipulation, the conservative clique protecting its own, the secret nights Marcus encouraged her, and her father's unbroken faith. Her confession was both explanation and indictment, a silent cry for every generation whose dreams died under color lines. Alvarez listened in silence. Her eyes flickered with empathy, but her expression remained unreadable. When Ava finished, the air thickened with tension. Finally, Alvarez sat down, steepled her fingers, and looked deep into Ava's eyes. Then, unexpectedly, she slid her chair closer, her tone softer. "I know what it feels like to be erased, Carter. I was once the odd one out, questioned just for being different. There were nights I almost quit, but I stayed, not to prove anything to them, but to remind people like Vaughn that we have a right to exist, to dream, to fight for truth." She offered a rare, encouraging smile. "I will not report your after-hours sessions, nor will I punish Marcus. But listen closely. If you truly want to change things, to restore your father's honor and your own, to stand for everyone crushed by this system, then stop hiding. Don't prove yourself in the shadows. Take them on here in the open sky with your real talent. That is true justice." Alvarez rose and drew open the blinds, flooding the room with sunlight. Her voice hardened. "One more thing, Carter. Opportunities like this are few and far between. When yours comes, don't let anyone, even yourself, stop you from seizing it." Ava left the security office with a heart both heavy and strangely light. Though danger loomed, she no longer felt alone. For the first time, outside the trenches of prejudice, she sensed the power of solidarity, and a silent nod from a trailblazer ahead of her, reminding her, fight not merely to survive, but to claim the right to fly under a sky of freedom. In the corridor, the sun climbed higher. Ava lifted her gaze, eyes bright as sunlight danced around her, Angela Alvarez's words echoing in her mind. "Stop proving yourself in the dark, Carter. Make all of Hopefield look up." The last rays of daylight slipped quietly through the hangar window, leaving behind a Hopefield heavy with nameless resentments. Ava strode forward with purpose, her heart fueled by a newfound strength, the power of belief Angela Alvarez had given her, the only woman at Hopefield who'd ever seen her as a person rather than an anomaly or thorn to be plucked. Night fell, and the base was quieter than usual. The faint glow of yellow lights flickered here and there. Small groups of cadets creaked through their technical drills in the main buildings, while the eastern simulator bay lay nearly abandoned after hours. Slipping on her battered maintenance jacket, Ava tapped the ghost access card Angela had quietly passed her, one that left no trace in the normal audit logs. She eased the door open, heart pounding, senses razor-sharp. Tonight wasn't merely another practice session, it was her bold step across the line that divides fear from courage. But she hadn't expected someone to be waiting inside. The dim green glow of the control panel illuminated the sharp-featured face of Cadet Ethan Walsh, final-year trainee, crew-cut, uniform stained with grease, his blue eyes watching Ava with wary curiosity. Ethan was Colonel Walsh's son, typical military legacy, smart, handsome, confident, seemingly born to be granted every advantage. But tonight he bore none of that arrogant air. Instead, he looked tense, curious, even tired. Ava paused, breath coming fast. Ethan's gaze tracked her every move, as if questioning and protecting himself from some inconvenient truth. the air between them strained like a taut wire. "I didn't expect you at this hour," Ethan said, quietly but clearly. "I was just running a system check." Ava said nothing. She'd heard too many excuses during her time under Hopefield's microscope. She moved over to the console to log in with her secondary credentials, but Ethan stepped forward, placing a hand over the keyboard, signaling her to stop. "I know who you are, Carter," he said, voice softer now. "I know you're not a saboteur or some lucky fluke." Ava stiffened, chin lifting in defiance. Ethan hesitated, then lowered his voice, more candid. "They told me to monitor you and report anything out of the ordinary to Vaughn, but I saw you repair 2 broken simulators that had stumped 3 instructors. You don't know this, but in 3 weeks, every device you used malfunctioned. Yet, after you fixed them, the logs got wiped and replaced with reports of operator error." Ava's lips curved in a bitter half-smile. "Have you ever wondered why? Why those glitches always happen when I, or people like me, take the controls?" Ethan was silent, the hum of the bay's cooling fans the only sound. Finally, he admitted softly, almost ashamed, "I thought I understood everything about Hopefield, until I watched you fly last night. You handled it like you were born in that cockpit, and I saw Vaughn himself dive into the admin console after each of your runs. I overheard him ordering the tech team to adjust the input data, verify the score code, and delete the record." Ava collapsed into a nearby chair, exhaling sharply. Angry, hurt, validated all at once. Just when she thought she'd been imagining it, someone from the other side confirmed it. At that moment, Ethan slid open the drawer under the console and pulled out a thick dossier, placing it before her. "I managed to snag copies of every instance Vaughn tampered with your scores. I'm not sure how much it'll help, but you should see it." They sat in a heavy silence. Ethan watched Ava's every move, his eyes searching for a way out of the invisible chokehold called family tradition. Then, lowering his voice even further, he added, "One more thing. The F-22, scheduled for the demo in 3 days, Vaughn has nicknamed it the Harlem Bird. He told a tech officer, 'Let that bird take the sky one last time, to prove that legacy belongs only in Harlem.' They're turning your father's heritage into a joke." Ava stared at the dossier, knuckles white around its edge. Ethan's words cut deep. Vaughn wasn't simply trying to remove her. He wanted to bury the Carter name forever, to mock generations of sky dreamers behind closed doors. Finally, Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, his first gesture of real solidarity. "I don't know if I have the guts to defy my father in this system, but if you need me, I'll stand on the side of truth." Ava looked at him, her anger melting into profound empathy. That bond only forged when 2 people have been swept into the same whirlwind of injustice and are now ready to fight it, armed with nothing but a name and a slim dossier. Outside, night winds swept past, carrying echoes of past lives and the suffocated dreams Hopefield had crushed. Ava knew that, from this night on, her fight wouldn't be hers alone. She squeezed Ethan's shoulder in a silent vow. "We'll do whatever it takes to make this sky belong to dreamers who dare to break every barrier." Ethan's hand had barely left Ava's shoulder when, in the hush of the simulator bay, only the rush of wind through the vents and the faint glow of the control panels remained. 2 people from opposite worlds now shared a single breath, not just because they resented injustice, but because they both understood that at Hopefield no one can fight alone. That very night, Ava returned to the dorm, clutching the priceless dossier, its cover scrawled in Ethan's hurried handwriting. "The truth starts here." Page by page, she reviewed the tampering timestamps, the technical glitches. and the data purges that had condemned her to unfair failures. Her anger had grown beyond a solitary spark. It had become a storm, fueled by the desire to expose this system's lies. The next morning, Ava sought out Marcus in the maintenance hangar, her eyes alight with a determination he recognized instantly. Tonight, the real battle would begin. In a cramped service room piled with old parts and F-16 engine casings, 4 allies met in quiet confidence. Ava, embodying buried dreams; Marcus, keeper of memory and master of the system's loopholes; Angela Alvarez, the lone wolf of base security, resolute and strategic; and Ethan Walsh, the legacy cadet who'd torn down the barriers of privilege to stand for what's right. Each bore scars of Hopefield's exclusion. Each represented a generation pushed to the margins or forced to look the other way. Tonight, they sat as a coalition of outcasts, the only ones brave enough to stare the truth in the face. The plan took shape in precise detail. Angela Alvarez quietly wielded her security authority to monitor every move of Hunter Vaughn. Surveillance footage, command center access logs, backup archives, even the supervisor's accounts in the tech division. None escaped her scrutiny. Beneath her ironclad discipline lay a strategic mind, ready to manipulate data trails without arousing the slightest suspicion. Marcus Brooks, with over 20 years of maintenance experience, worked in secret on the standby F-22, unregistered in the flight system and accessible only to him. He inspected every bolt, every line of code in the central console, ensuring no last-minute sabotage like Vaughn's usual demo day adjustments could occur. In the hangar, he also set up backup power systems, guarding against any deliberate interference during the showcase. Ethan Walsh, as the colonel's son, enjoyed unfettered entry to restricted areas. He used his insider status to insert minor gaps into the guard schedule, brief windows when Ava could slip from the dorm to the simulator and hangar undetected. A simple shift swap or a sudden reallocation of patrols was enough to keep their operation running smoothly. He even leveraged his inherited access codes to back up raw logs, ready for any attempt at erasure. And Ava herself stood at the heart of the uprising. By day, she feigned compliance, filing endless appeals and requests for reconsideration like any resigned trainee. But by night, under Marcus and Ethan's protection, she trained until exhaustion on the F-22 sim, mastering every emergency procedure and subverting the very anomalies Hopefield's tech team had used to derail her. Alvarez quietly safeguarded every secret run result, preparing the evidence for when it would need to be shown before the review board. Tension mounted by the hour. Hunter Vaughn was no fool. He sensed the irregularities around the tech area, shift swaps, inexplicable minor maintenance hiccups. His gaze hardened each time he spotted Marcus in the hangar, glimpsed Ava cleaning a corridor, or noticed Angela Alvarez probing the surveillance feeds more than usual. In the nights leading up to the demonstration, Vaughn convened secret meetings with his trusted officers, masking his frustration. Some equipment suddenly delivered original, untampered readings. Score logs couldn't be retroactively wiped. He ordered cross-checks of every technician's record, instructed staff to flag any after-hours access, and ominously warned, anyone caught manipulating the system will be charged with treason. All 4, Ava, Marcus, Alvarez, and Ethan, knew the stakes if they were discovered. It wasn't just expulsion or disgrace. They risked charges of compromising national defense security, a permanent stain in any U.S. military record. Sleepless nights followed as each wrestled with fear and the hunger for justice. One small mistake could cost them everything, their futures, their freedom. Yet, whenever they regrouped in that tiny tech room, one look from a comrade or Marcus's resolute reminder, We have nothing left to lose. If not now, then never. Dissolved every doubt into steely resolve. Outside, Hopefield's calm was a fragile facade. Inside, the storm had fully formed. Late on the eve before the showcase, Alvarez spread a base map before them, red circles marking guard post gaps and schedule blind spots. This is our only window. The demonstration starts at 2 p.m. The pre-check runs at 12:45 p.m. If we're going to intervene, or to release our evidence, it must be done before Vaughn locks the jet down under maximum security. No second chances. In Ava's mind, her father's silhouette appeared, not as the defeated man, but as the silent warrior he'd always been. She knew that who claimed this sky at that moment would decide the fate of every generation yet to come. No more words were needed. They parted in silence, each carrying a shard of hope, ready to face the longest night of their lives, the night when the line between justice and oppression would be drawn by a single act of courage under the open sky. Hopefield lay under its cloak of tranquil darkness, but behind every wall, hidden tensions stretched taut like a string on the brink of snapping. The entire base seemed to hold its breath before the coming storm. No one knew who would be erased from Hopefield's rolls by morning, and who would make an indelible mark on its history. Deep in the maintenance hangar, Marcus Brooks, his hair silvered at the temples, made final preparations on the Harlem Bird, the fateful F-22. He understood that every procedure, every line of code entered tonight would decide not only one pilot's future, but the fate of generations whose dreams had been stifled by this system's invisible hand. Just before midnight, the hangar doors banged open, flooding the room with harsh white light. First, Lieutenant Hunter Vaughn strode in, crisp uniform uncreased, eyes cold and calculating. Gone was his usual calm confidence. Tonight he moved with the wariness of a man who senses rebellion in the air. "Marcus," he said without preamble, "I want to personally verify every feedback channel and sensor on the Harlem Bird. This demonstration is historic. There can be no mistakes." He didn't wait for a reply, his gaze fixed on the performance graphs. His meaning was clear. He intended absolute control over this aircraft. Beneath his professional facade lay ambition and fear that a resurrected Carter legacy would ruin Vaughn's perfect showcase. Marcus kept his face inscrutable, his veteran eyes betraying no flicker of emotion, though his heart burned. He feigned cooperation, meticulously fulfilling each of Vaughn's demands, tuning the stick's responsiveness, recalibrating the accelerometer, optimizing radar sensitivity, even resecuring the secondary flight control encryption. All in under an hour. Vaughn punched in module configurations and saved backup logs under his name, a smug smile growing each time a performance metric spiked. What Vaughn didn't know was that Marcus had discreetly installed a tiny keylogger device in the console's auxiliary panel. Every tweak, every cryptographic key only Vaughn thought private, was being recorded. And Marcus had programmed an automatic rollback sequence. The second Vaughn left the hangar, every optimization would revert to factory settings, stripping Vaughn of the exclusive edge he'd painstakingly engineered. When Vaughn finally finished his checks, he turned to Marcus with a forced grin. "All set? Tomorrow leaves no room for surprises. Anyone who doesn't belong here will be gone for good." Marcus nodded, hiding the contempt burning in his eyes. To the very end, Vaughn could not imagine that an aging black maintenance chief, without pedigree, could quietly undo all his calculations. After Vaughn's cologne-scented departure, Marcus exhaled at last. Sitting beside the F-22, he retrieved a small silver data drive from his pocket and plugged it into the service port. Within minutes, he extracted the complete operation logs, the exclusive optimization records, Vaughn's personal encryption codes, and every instance of score tampering from months past. That drive was more than proof against Vaughn. It was Ava's talisman should she fail. Under the hangar's yellow lights, Marcus gently stroked the plane's sleek fuselage. Beneath a thin coat of paint, he'd clandestinely engraved the old Carter emblem, a prayer for all whose dreams had been stolen. Silently, he made his way back to the barracks and handed the drive to Ava, looking into her eyes where hope and fear intertwined. "Take this," he said. "Inside you'll find the full truth about the Harlem Bird and everything Vaughn has done, not just to you but to everyone whose dreams Hopefield crushed. Tomorrow you cannot lose, not for yourself, but for your father, for me, for Alvarez, and for everyone who will follow." Ava gripped the drive, a surge of emotion welling in her. Though the night outside was bitterly cold, in her hands burned the flames of memory, justice, and hope more fiercely than ever. Elsewhere on the base, Vaughn phoned a trusted officer, voice dripping with arrogance. "By morning, everything will be back where it belongs. The Harlem Bird will stand as the final testament to tradition's triumph." No one knew that his certainty would sow the seeds of his undoing. In a small room, Ava sat in the dim glow, lifting the drive in her palm, whispering her vow. Tomorrow, the sky will know who truly deserves it. And, for the first time in years, the Carter dream was no longer buried in silence. It was poised to take flight at dawn. The dawn's biting cold might as well have been a warm breeze against the thick skin of those forged by iron will. Ava stood before the mirror, straightening her uniform collar one last time and checking the fake badge Lieutenant Alvarez had arranged the night before. Nestled inside her breast pocket lining was the tiny data drive, both her talisman and her ticket to justice, holding the hopes of an entire generation. On show day, Hopefield felt charged with an almost electric tension. Extra checkpoints lined every corridor, security tightened, and clusters of officers wove through the halls like ants. From the loudspeakers crackled martial music and terse commands, urging everyone to their stations. On the tarmac, the VIP motorcade rolled in, polished heels clicking against the tiled floor, each gaze heavy with scrutiny. Then Ava's earpiece crackled with Ethan's encrypted message. "Time's up. 3 minutes to go. The central corridor just swapped guards. Alvarez can't intervene now. 1 second's delay and the whole plan collapses." Pressed close to the wall, Ava inhaled deeply. Every nerve felt taut under pressure, and yet straighter, reinforced by her resolve. Her heart hammered, not with fear, but like a war drum echoing the Carter legacy. She tugged her cap's brim low, slipped into her stride like any other officer, and headed straight for the technical control hub, reserved for the demonstration pilots and top brass. At the first checkpoint, a security officer peered at her badge suspiciously. Ava offered a calm smile and flashed a technical report, pretending an urgent systems check. The officer hesitated, hand hovering over his radio as if about to call it in. Ava's voice cut through crisply. "Central node sync alert. Command has ordered an immediate line check. Anything I should report up the chain?" Flustered by her confidence and technical jargon, he nodded, letting her pass. Her pulse raced, sweat beating down her spine, but she barely had time to exhale. At the corridor's end, Lieutenant Vaughn's own guard stood watch, suspicion in his eyes. Drawing on every ounce of composure she'd honed through years of exclusion, Ava hunched over the signal panel, retrieved the small toolkit Marcus had prepared, and pretended to run diagnostics. She triggered a counterfeit warning light, then called out, Code 24B. Data transmission failure. Switch to backup power now. A squad of young techs swarmed in, none daring to question a senior technical officer under emergency orders. Chaos reigned for a heartbeat, precisely as Alvarez and Ethan had planned. If you can't be invisible, be the center of attention, and use the system's own protocols to mask your steps. One last stretch remained before the restricted zone, where the Harlem Bird waited under the pale hangar lights. Ava removed her gloves and placed her palm over the biometric scanner, the temporary access codes Ethan had cracked glowing in her mind. The door swished open to the cavernous interior, the distant drone of engines mingling with an overhead announcement. In 10 minutes, the demonstration squadron assembles. F-22, A, Harlem Bird, is ready for final inspection. Through her headset came Marcus's steady, quivering voice. The Harlem Bird's waiting for you. All parameters are back to baseline, and systems are stable. Just step into the cockpit, and this sky will no longer belong to anyone but you. Ava approached the fighter's nose, her chest rising with fierce emotion. She placed her hand on the silver wing emblem, her father's Carter mark etched long ago, now gleaming under the lights like a final message. Don't step back, daughter. They once denied us this sky, but never forever. Outside, the final call rang over the speakers. In the control tower, Vaughn was greeting senior officers, confident today would cement his legacy, that the Harlem Bird belonged solely to those of proper lineage. Ava climbed into the cockpit, hands trembling only with anticipation. She keyed her radio. I'm on deck. It's time to give this sky back to justice. Beyond the airfield, a flawless blue sky awaited. Rows of dignitaries stood under fluttering flags, press and generals assembled, unaware that within minutes a coup would unfold to shatter Vaughn's empire of lies, privilege, and the pain of all those cast aside. All breaths held as the F-22's engines roared to life, signaling the Harlem Bird's triumphant return. This time not bearing the weight of old prejudices, but the boundless dreams of a new generation, determined to soar on their own wings. The F-22's cockpit hatch slammed shut behind her, and Ava could feel her heartbeat thundering through the thick glass as the engines rumbled to life. A final summons. She entered her pilot code and heard Marcus's warm voice crackle over the radio. Don't be afraid, just be yourself. This sky owes you an apology. Outside on the runway, Vaughn's Harlem Bird gleamed under a ring of senior officials, officers, and press, as if it were Hopefield's greatest treasure. Vaughn strode confidently forward, his chest bristling with the cold pride of someone convinced he alone commanded the skies. Sunlight glinted off his uniform and rows of medals, but behind that brilliant facade was a mind in turmoil, sensing the Carter storm brewing silently above. Minutes later, the loudspeaker boomed, "Begin the F-22 squadron demonstration. Squadron, take formation and prepare to roll." The sky was a flawless blue, a breeze rippling through the VIP grandstand where Pentagon brass sat at attention, eagerly awaiting a showcase of top-tier technology, piloting prowess, and their own legacy. Vaughn's jet leaped into the air with a roar, carving a razor-sharp white contrail against the sky. True to form, he executed complex aerobatics, barrel rolls, sudden reversals, maximum thrust climbs followed by steep dives, all performed with arrogant precision to prove that only a chosen one could tame this iron bird. But from the distance, another engine roared alive. Ava pulled back on her stick, and the backup F-22 sprang from the hangar like an arrow, streaking straight into the demonstration formation. Air traffic control erupted in alarm. Unregistered aircraft detected in the show airspace. All units verify immediately. Ava kept her frequency private with Marcus and Ethan, whispering, "It's time to give the sky back to justice." She pressed in alongside Vaughn's jet, banking close to its wing. Vaughn's eyes went wide, half fury, half disbelief that this was real. "Who the hell authorized you to fly here?" His threatening voice crackled over the public channel. Ava didn't answer. Instead, she tilted her wing in a flawless, defiant maneuver, her father's Carter emblem shining on her fuselage in the sunlight. An unspoken declaration: "I'm here to reclaim what was stolen." Below, the officials and spectators buzzed with confusion, binoculars scanning the skies, technicians scrambling through pilot rosters. Above, there were only two jets, the old order's champion and the one pilot restoring voice to the silenced. Vaughn, who'd been supremely confident that his secret tweaks would guarantee flawless performance, felt his controls respond unpredictably. In his spiral dive, navigation sensors unraveled. Stick response lagged. Control sensitivities reverted to factory default. His hands clenched the stick, sweat beading on his brow. The jet wouldn't obey him. The very improvements he'd smuggled in now betraying him, no longer matching the reflexes he'd practiced to perfection. In the next instant, the Harlem Bird pitched into a dangerous spin. Alarms blared in the cockpit. "Stall! Stall! Spin warning!" On the ground, the crowd gasped, a seasoned aviator plummeting before the top brass. A nightmare for the system. Ava held formation beside him. She knew she could let him crash, delivering perfect justice. Vaughn, the architect of so many broken dreams, would fall in front of the entire Pentagon review board. But her father's lesson surfaced. The strong don't avenge, they save those who hurt them, proving they're above it all. She thought of Marcus's steady gaze, Alvarez's weary smile, Ethan's trembling hand. Their voices united in her heart. Win, but don't become them. Ava keyed the radio, her voice calm and unwavering. "Vaughn, throttle back to 45%. Don't fight the adjustments. Hold 2 degrees left until the plane stabilizes. I repeat, trust the aircraft to guide you back on course." Vaughn clenched his jaw, forced to follow advice from the one he'd always scorned. After heart-stopping seconds, the Harlem Bird shuddered violently, then miraculously steadied. The alarm ceased, replaced by Vaughn's ragged breaths. The crowd below erupted in relieved cheers. Pentagon officials stared in amazement at the miraculous recovery, then barely had time to process before Ava's F-22 streaked into the squadron's formation and flawlessly executed the same role that had undone Vaughn, a perfect spiral dive, inverted flyby, and a sustained extreme-speed barrel roll back toward the grandstand. Over the radio, the awestruck controller exclaimed, "Never before has any pilot nailed that maneuver at Hopefield." On the ground, applause thundered. Photographers snapped furiously, capturing the image of a black pilot bearing the Carter emblem, who had just rescued her rival and conquered the sky with an incontestable feat. Ava led the squadron through the cerulean expanse, not as victor over a vanquished foe, but as someone who had transcended every limit, every shadow of her own fears and those of the old system. And on their radios, Ethan's voice cracked with emotion. Marcus fell silent in awe, and Alvarez allowed herself a satisfied smile. Meanwhile, Vaughn, for the first time, faced an undeniable truth. Justice and grace cannot be manipulated forever. Ava's final rollout concluded to thunderous applause, the military announcements reverberating across Hopefield, drowning out even the howling wind on the runway. But as the aerial spectacle drew to a close, A truth long buried began to rise to the surface. Layers of deceit swept away by talent, courage, and the thirst for justice. The moment Vaughn's Harlem Bird touched down, Ava taxied her F-22 smoothly along the runway, the landing lights blinking like her father's watchful eyes. Below, the highest-ranking officers, led by Air Force Chief of Staff General Thomas Michaels, stood as one. The silver-haired general, known for his rare outspokenness within a conservative system and his push to reform bases nationwide, strode to the center of the ramp. Grabbing a microphone, he broadcast across the entire base net. "Ava Carter, you have not only saved a fellow pilot, but achieved a first in Hopefield's history. On behalf of the entire Air Force, you are hereby authorized to continue your demonstration and to honor the man who inspired you, your father, Samuel Carter." All eyes turned skyward to Ava's cockpit. Voice trembling with emotion but steady in resolve, she replied, "I dedicate today to my father, Samuel Carter, who taught me that even when we're knocked down or cast aside, people of color still have the right to fly and to dream. And I dedicate it to everyone whose dreams were stolen because of their skin or their background. Today, we reclaim our sky." The crowd erupted into cheers, many wiping away tears. Marcus, Alvarez, and Ethan stood side by side on the ramp, proud nods passing between them. They knew that Ava's flight had carried not just her, but generations of the forgotten into the light. But the day wasn't over. Before Ava stepped down from her cockpit, General Michaels signaled his Special Investigations team and the Inspector General's panel to convene immediately. A public reckoning in broad daylight, beyond any procedure or hidden power. Oil-smudged and resolute, Marcus presented the data drive directly to the board, laying bare every hidden log. Ethan, once firmly on the other side, provided printed copies of Vaughn's tampering with scores, encrypted commands, and falsified schedules. Angela Alvarez produced surveillance logs and maintenance change records, matching each coincidental malfunction to the suppression of pilots of color. Facing the generals, Marcus declared, "For the last 10 years, Hopefield's testing and evaluation system was systematically abused to eliminate candidates of color or those without powerful backing. Lieutenant Hunter Vaughn and his conservative cronies manipulated safety protocols to mask their racial prejudice." The investigative panel pored over the evidence. General Michaels appointed an independent technical team to verify every record. The findings were irrefutable. Over 30 high-scoring pilots of color had been failed by system errors, or labeled unsuited. Some records had been wiped entirely, only to reveal Vaughn's unauthorized access in the audit trail. Several names, once erased, were reinstated, accompanied by the board's formal apologies. When asked under oath, Ethan stood tall, despite his father Colonel Walsh's pained stare, and affirmed, "I witnessed Vaughn repeatedly breach the system, altering scores, rerouting guard shifts, and overriding assessments without independent oversight. Justice belongs to those who earn it, no matter their skin color." Angela Alvarez added, "I, too, have been a victim of favoritism and backroom pressure, but I stayed to prove that people of color can stand up, protect each other, and rewrite our history." As the technical logs, candidate lists, and secret upgrades for favored candidates aligned precisely, Vaughn's facade crumbled. Facing the panel, his face drained of color and voice trembling, he stammered, I was only following procedure. I wanted to protect Hopefield's traditions." No one believed him. The base fell silent, then erupted in applause. Those who had once suffered in silence now stood tall, looking to Ava, Marcus, Alvarez, and Ethan as living symbols of a new era, where truth, justice and human dignity finally reclaimed their rightful place. General Michaels delivered the final verdict with steely conviction. No one, no matter their rank, has the right to strip another of their dream or dignity because of their background or skin color. Hopefield will change. And Ava Carter, you are living proof that this sky belongs at last to everyone who dares to dream and to fight for it. Hopefield had never before seen such a tempestuous day, yet never had dawn felt so radiant and liberating. Overnight, the old order, those time-honored traditions shrouded in darkness and prejudice, collapsed beneath the unstoppable weight of the truth. The next morning, General Thomas Michaels' decree was posted across the entire base and forwarded straight to the Department of Defense. Hunter Vaughn was immediately suspended, stripped of rank, and ordered to appear before the highest disciplinary board on charges of professional misconduct, result manipulation, abuse of power, discrimination, and jeopardizing the safety of the U.S. Air Force. There was now nowhere for Vaughn to hide. His co-conspirators were named, records cross-checked, and an era of shadow rule officially ended. In the Grand Strategy Hall, the former off-limit zone for anyone not of the right pedigree, a special ceremony was held, bringing together officers, Department of Defense representatives, military media, and the new generation of cadets. Ava Carter stood front and center in her navy blue service dress, now a commissioned Air Force officer, an achievement that, just 10 days earlier, had seemed a distant dream. From the dais, General Michaels proclaimed to the assembled troops, "Hopefield will no longer stand for prejudice, but for every dream we vouchsafe. Our revamped evaluation system, under independent oversight, with full transparency and technical procedures, cross-checks by minority and female panels, takes effect today. Discrimination in any form will be met with strict consequences. No safe havens, no unspoken exceptions." Below, cadets, black, Latinx, Asian, female, watched Ava with quiet gratitude. Hopefield's future now belonged to them, not suppressed by outdated molds. Ava's record was fully restored. Her top-tier transcripts, once rigged, were re-verified and her genuine scores reinstated. Not only was she welcomed back, but she was also appointed to the instructor cadre, the first graduate from Harlem, daughter of the once oppressed, now a role model for all. During the formal investiture, General Michaels invited Ava to the stage. As stirring martial music played, he pinned the Distinguished Service Medal to her uniform, the very award posthumously intended for Samuel Carter, now engraved for both father and daughter. Samuel and Ava Carter, Harlem Wings Never Die. Ava clasped the medal, tears silently tracing her cheeks as she glanced at her father's small portrait nearby, where the emblem of the Harlem Wings shone anew. On the ramp below, Marcus, Alvarez, and Ethan stood shoulder to shoulder, pride shining in their eyes. Marcus whispered, "Your father must be smiling somewhere high above." Military and civilian media instantly heralded the story. Harlem Bird, Hopefield's historic overthrow, portraying Ava not just as a personal victor, but as a symbol for all whose names were once erased from the sky because of race, background, or gender. 1 week later, Captain Ava Carter officially joined the Air Force instructional staff, chosen to lead flight simulation training and serve as a special advisor to the Training Reform Council. Standing before hundreds of new cadets, she declared with unwavering conviction, "Where you come from, the color of your skin or your family's legacy matters far less than one thing: daring to launch and refusing to let anyone clip your wings." That very day, she placed her father's medal in Hopefield's Heritage Hall, hanging it beside a large plaque that reads, "Harlem Wings, the wings of every dream once denied. Hopefield, once an impregnable fortress of prejudice, now marked the dawn of a new era, one where honor, opportunity, and recognition belong only to the deserving, regardless of race, gender, or lineage. And in the hearts of those hundreds of new cadets, the vision was seeded and ready to soar. Born of one black woman who'd once been expelled for daring to dream of flight, now immortalized as the harbinger of Harlem's wings reborn. 6 months after those stormy days, Hopefield's sky had turned a brilliant blue, bathed in golden sunlight. On the center runway, a new class of cadets stood at attention in crisp uniforms, eyes fixed skyward as an F-22 sliced through the clouds in bold arcs, etching proud trajectories against the heavens. They all knew who sat in that cockpit. Captain Ava Carter, the first black woman in Hopefield history to dismantle an unjust system with nothing but the legendary wings of the Harlem Bird. Below, in the warm morning light, Marcus Brooks leaned against the railing, arms folded, his once silver hair framing a face alight with youthful joy. He watched each loop and climb as though witnessing the rebirth of the dream that had been snuffed out years ago, now soaring again in a new, dazzling form, powerful, free. Nearby, Colonel Angela Alvarez, now in charge of training, beckoned the female cadets to step forward, her encouraging smile shining. Ethan Walsh, more composed than ever, strode past the new recruiting center, clutching a stack of multicultural applicant files, ready to launch Hopefield's first truly equitable admissions cycle. Up above, Ava commanded the sky with precision, born not only of elite skill but of personal triumph over injustice. She remembered the nights when her tears mixed with engine oil in the hangar, Marcus's steady words of support, Alvarez's firm admonition, "Stop proving yourself in the shadows, Carter. Make all of Hopefield look up," and Ethan's decision to side with truth over legacy. Above all, she felt her late father Samuel Carter's proud gaze, teaching her that real wings belong to those who dare to dream and fight for it. With every pass over the VIP stands, she tipped her wing in silent salute to the empty seat reserved for her father, where his small portrait and the Harlem Wings Never Die medal stood each training season. As she banked overhead, she whispered, "Father, today this sky refuses to deny us again." And on that very sky, the new cadets, a farmer's daughter, a Latinx boy, an Asian American young woman, saw someone like them own the air, no longer sidelined by invisible lines. They passed along the story of the Harlem Bird woman, who had not only risen from adversity, but carried countless dreams in her wake. Inside Hopefield's Heritage Hall, beneath the Samuel and Ava Carter medal, a new inscription was added as an eternal reminder. No one can break your wings if you dare to fly for justice and belief. From that day forward, Ava Carter's name became a living symbol of hope, resilience, and the courage to face the greatest darkness, the fear of being forgotten and denied. Whenever young people of color across America feel shaken by prejudice, they need only look to Hopefield's sky to see the Harlem Bird's wings carving a path of freedom and faith. This wasn't just one person's victory. It was triumph for justice, community, and every dream once denied. Ava Carter, the Harlem Bird, forever reminds us, everyone has the right to touch the free sky if we dare to fight and never bow to injustice. And somewhere at the highest heights of that sky, her dream truly became immortal. What do you think of Captain Ava Carter's incredible journey, from a black woman publicly humiliated and silenced by the system to rising up, overturning injustice, and becoming a living icon for thousands of forsaken dreams? If you were in her place, would you have the courage to stand tall and fly for yourself and your community? Share your thoughts or your own stories of inspiration in the comments below. Your voice could empower someone out there. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss more powerful stories of overcoming injustice and daily doses of motivation. See you next time on our next great journey.